Well, hello and welcome to the Bradford National Bank podcast studio in beautiful downtown Highland, Illinois. This is the Highland Dirt Podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Vonder. Haar. How's everybody doing tonight? You doing good? I'm doing great. Perfect racing weather in Highland, Illinois today, a high of 70 degrees. Unfortunately, that's going to drop to in the 20s tonight. But hello to all of our friends watching live on social media via Facebook, YouTube, and X. If you have questions for us during the podcast, please put them in the comments section and we'll do our best to get to them. We've got a great show for you tonight. Joining us on the podcast will be local dirt racing expert Jacob Blumenstein, as always. And in just a few minutes, we'll be joined by the voice of Highland Speedway, Mr. Doug Jenkins. The Highland Dirt Podcast, again, is brought to you by Jansen Auto Group. Hundreds of vehicles are available right now at gojansen.com. With Jansen Ford Breeze, Jansen Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Carmi, and Jansen Chevrolet in Germantown, they have just the vehicle you're looking for. You can search their entire inventory at gojansen.com. That's go, JANSEN.com. Jansen Auto Group is proud to support local dirt track racing and world-famous Highland Speedway. Well, you might be asking yourself, what is the Highland Dirt Podcast? We'll go over this one more time. The Highland Dirt Podcast features dirt racing talk plus news, information, and interviews from some of your favorite people and personalities in and around world-famous Highland Speedway. One more question, what is Highland Speedway? Well, Highland Speedway is a quarter-mile bullring-style dirt track located in Highland, Illinois. We're 30 minutes east of St. Louis, Missouri. We've been racing in the dirt on Saturday nights since 1962, and we race super late models, modifieds, pro modifieds, and street stocks under the Dirt Car banner, plus micro sprints, 410 wing sprints, Extreme Outlaw Series, 4-cylinders, vintage, and kids mods. All in a covered facility with seating for 3,000, located on the beautiful Madison County Fairgrounds. Did you guys get all that? Did you take notes? Well, now that you know a little bit more about the podcast and you got a brief history lesson on exactly what Highland Speedway is, let me introduce my co-host for tonight. He's a dirt racing fanatic. He has more streaming subscriptions than pets. This is proven. He finished third in the Warrior division in 2023. I think he's racing Warriors again in 2024. And he knows pretty much every driver that stepped in a late model the last, 10, 12, 15 years. It's Jacob Blumenstein. What's up, Jacob?
What's going on, Kurt?
How you doing tonight? Enjoying the beautiful weather in Highland?
Yeah. Me and the wife actually went and bought another Burrow Max, and we took a little ride to the racetrack today. We were able to loop back around the back way and crept up to the fence.
Did you do some hot laps in the Burromax?
I did not. I was tempted to, but I think we were pushing it driving to where we did already, so I didn't want to get in any trouble.
All right, we won't tell on you. Your secret's safe with us. Well, before we bring on our guest for tonight, like I said, Jacob, we're going to have Doug Jenkins on the podcast tonight. Let's talk a little bit about what happened the last week in dirt racing, and I guess we're going to talk about kind of Golden Isles, right? The Deuces Wild with the High Limit and Lucas Oil.
Yeah, I watched I think it was the Wednesday night portion or Thursday night. I didn't really watch any of the late model stuff, but the one night I did watch the High Limit and 604s, which I was impressed. They were done by 7:45.
Were they?
They ran heat rates, and they didn't have any B mains. And I mean, features went pretty caution free. And I don't know if there's time difference, but I know it's like, on one hand, I love when races get done early, but on the other hand, like when I want to watch races, I want to watch races all night, not get done at 8 o'clock and have something else to watch after that.
Yep. Well, I think, it looks like High Limit, I think, ran 2 nights. They got rained out, I believe, on Friday night. Tyler Courtney with the win on Thursday night. Some other notables, Brad Sweet 6th, Kyle Larson 8th. And then Saturday night, so skip Friday night, rain out. And then Saturday night, Jacob Allen wins. Some other notables, Rico Abreu 4th, Brad Sweet 6th, Kyle Larson 8th. And then I think Kyle Larson raced on Saturday night with the late models too, didn't he?
Yeah. And, I always forget, or not always forget, but that he races on Sundays too. So I watched the race down in Atlanta, and he was there as well. So he had a busy schedule.
I mean, we're busy guys, but could you imagine all that travel, all that? I mean, just doing and again, he's got the money, he's doing it first class, he's doing it the right way, but still, it takes a lot of energy to do that stuff.
Yeah, you gotta love it, and that's one thing that he does. And he's mentioned that he wishes he could race more. He wishes he could race more of the late model stuff, but conflicting schedules. I mean, there's only so much time in a day, and obviously he's got the NASCAR stuff that pays the bills. But yeah, it's impressive with what he does and how many wins he can get in multiple different, I guess, sanctions or types of cars.
Yep. So we're gonna watch a little video here. Another in news last week. So our boy Zach Dom, so local guy that runs a lot of the open wheel stuff. He was running a USAC race down. Was that in Ocala, Jacob?
Yeah, down in Florida.
Yeah. So we're gonna watch a video here. So hang out with us while we watch this, and then we got a little interview of Zach afterwards. So Zach is okay, but pretty wild accident here at the USAC race last week in Ocala.
Brandon Maddox falling to the final transfer spot as the checkered flag's going to drop in this one. Oh my goodness, huge crash off the top of turns 3 and 4. Zach Dom out of the park in 5.
So as we saw there, Zach left the park.
Yeah. I think that's just open wheel racing. I don't think it was anybody's fault. I think he said he just hit the right rear, and that was the aftermath of it.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. But we'll watch a little an interview here afterwards. Sounds like Zach.
Good news is Zach Dom is up and out of his race car and okay and walking around his pit area. Zach, accident, there's no doubt about that. First off, are you feeling okay? And second, what happened?
Yeah, I feel as good as I could be expected to feel after that, I guess. My knee was killing me there, and I lost vision for a little bit, but just typical crash symptoms, I guess. Don't feel the greatest, but, we'll feel better tomorrow. I just got in there and, qualified eighth, so I knew one guy missed it, didn't know if anybody else missed it, so I thought we had a shot at the front row and tried to drive around Brandon and caught a right rear. So that's went for a ride and see what I guess that ends our trip. So we'll go from here.
Well, glad to see that Zach was okay, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what a nasty wreck. So for those of you listening to the podcast version, so going into, I don't know if it was turn 2 or turn 4. I think it might have been turn 4. Zach left the park. So he bounced once, flipped, and then crushed that guardrail. I mean, to dent a guardrail of that size, I mean, that takes a lot of force.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what those things weigh, but probably close to 2,000 pounds, 1,600.
Well, looks like we lost Jacob there. Oh, we got him back. He's back. There you are, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably doing every bit of 80 miles an hour. Not metal, it's probably 1,600 to 2,000 pounds. It is scary.
Yeah, so glad to see that Zach's okay. Again, Zach's a local guy here to us. He's got the 5D Speed Shop over in Greenville, Illinois. And I think, does he call Pocahontas his hometown?
I think so.
Yep. So glad to see that Zach Dom, our local open wheel star, glad to see that he's okay. I think he announced a full midget series run this year. I think he's running Extreme and the USAC midgets, so he'll be running a full national schedule in the midgets. So something else regarding open wheel racing, we're going to share another screen here. So it was neat to see a local star, or a girl that came local and raced here, Jade Adavisian. So do you remember watching her race back in September here at Highland?
Yeah, I do. She was pretty fun to watch. I think she started in the back of the feature and finished top 5, I think.
Yep. So if you look on the screen, basically she had posted, Dad got everything hung up from last year with the Extreme Outlaw Series. So she's showing a picture on her X page, basically showing her 5 feature win trophies and her national championship in the Extreme Outlaw Series. And then a banner up top, it says September 16th at Highland Speedway. So Jacob, do you know how she ended up with that banner?
I do not, Kurt.
All right. Well, I'm setting you up there. So let me tell you the story. So after the feature race, which she finished third at Highland, I think she went from 18th to third, something like that, like plus 15, just put on a show. Her and her dad and I think her little sister, who looks a lot like her. Actually, I kind of mistook for Jade for a second. They walked up and they said, "Hey, there were these banners around the track. Do you know, and maybe could we have one?" Well, unfortunately, and one of my pet peeves at dirt tracks are people stealing banners at the track. We're doing a little something to literally police that in the last couple of years, but somebody had already stolen all the banners, but there was one left near a barbershop in Highland. So I showed, I think Jade's dad's name is Chris. So I showed Chris on the map. I said, "Here's where it's at. If you drive out and find it, it's yours." So they drove out, found it, and there it ended up on the wall at the Avedisian household. So pretty neat to see that and see Highland Speedway there, because I think she's the next big thing. What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, I think she's got a bright future. Is she running midgets again this year?
You know, I don't know that she's announced a full schedule. I know she's doing, I think, some late model racing this year. So again, I think she's trying to get some experience kind of in all aspects of racing. And she said that when I talked to her, I went and talked to her at Red Hill Raceway the night after Highland. I went and talked to her and to Taylor Reimer, and both of them said that their goals, ultimate goals, were NASCAR.
Really?
Yeah. So I think we could see either one of those. I know Taylor Reimer's running some late model stuff too, some pavement stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some other news you said Kyle Hammer made an announcement.
Yeah, I seen today that he announced he's going to run multiple big late model shows and run for the Mars Tour.
Okay. So he's from Clinton, Illinois. I think that's going from memory, but I think he's from up north.
Yeah.
Did he run the Heiser? Did he run the Josh Heiser late model a few times?
No, that was Brent McKinnon's.
That's right.
Car he ran this past year. Brent had the accident, and he was looking for a driver. So I actually know who kind of got Kyle in contact with McKinnon and made that deal happen.
Okay, I had those two mixed up, so you got that right. And then in some other local news, I'll throw up a post here. So the 9th annual Hot Rod and Stock Car Show happening in St. Jacob, Illinois at the Tow Bar. So it's kind of like a kickoff to the race season. Everything they do benefits Leaps of Love, which is a local charity that I know, they do a great job here in the Highland area, raising money for kids that are affected with cancer and their families. So they're going to have live music. The JCs are going to have their barbecue pit at the Tow Bar, raffles and 50-50, and they're going to have Pie Face. Jacob, do you know what Pie Face is?
I remember seeing videos of it last year, but I don't know what it pertains to.
Okay, so Pie Face, apparently, whichever driver, the two drivers that raise the most money of the drivers that are there, they'll have buckets out front. The top two smash pies into each other's faces.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so if you want to see your favorite driver smash a pie into another guy's face, go donate some money. And again, that's the 9th annual Hot Rod and Stock Car Show. That's coming up Saturday, March 9th, starting at 12 p.m. at Tow Bar. For more information, get a hold of Sydney Corey. You can find her on Facebook. Get a hold of Sydney Corey. So wanted to give them a quick shout out. And then also one other local thing that I wanted to talk about this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be doing some cleanup at the old racetrack. So anybody that wants to come and volunteer, bring your weed whacker, bring your backpack blower, bring your brooms, bring your shovels. It's an opportunity to get involved. So if anybody wants to do that, we're going to be starting out Saturday morning. And then I think we're going to also finish up on Sunday as well. So good opportunity there, Jacob, for people to get involved.
Yeah.
So let's talk about one more thing, and then we're going to bring on our guest. But this is something we did about a month ago. So let's do Jacob Blumenstein's top 10 super late model driver list. So we did this probably 4 weeks ago on the first podcast. So we're going to continue this. So and Jacob, you're just going to kind of give us a quick, 10 to 15 seconds on each one as we work through this list. But number 10 on the list, and a new one on the list, Turbo, Tyler Erb.
Yeah, and I kind of broke down. I mean, I looked at the numbers the best I could yesterday, and like I said, this, you can critique me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of how I put together. And I know there's some drivers that got wins down in speed weeks that are off this list, but it's a top 10 list. Like there's probably some other drivers that deserve to be on it, but the list is only so big. He had a good few runs, especially at East Bay, and he did get a win. So, that's kind of why he's on here.
Yep. And then I think another newcomer on the list, number 9, the Thrill from Belleville. Sorry, the Thrill from Morrisville, right? Or Moorville. What do they call him?
Mooresville, North Carolina.
Mooresville. The Thrill from Mooresville. Nick Hoffman made the list.
Yeah, he had a win down there too, and he only had 13 starts while he was down there. So he ran just mainly the outlaw shows and a couple of other, but he didn't get as eager as some of those other guys did. So in his 13 starts, his numbers were favorable. So if he would have ran twice as many shows as some of the other guys, he might have walked out of there with a couple more wins.
Yep, he's definitely up and comer in the late model world. He's on the cover of the latest Dirt Empire magazine. If you haven't subscribed to this magazine, pretty neat publication, Dirt Empire. So he's on the cover, and I think he's inside this thing no less than 9 times. So Nick Hoffman, definitely an up and comer in the late model world, big time modified driver. Number 8 on the list, and dropped a couple spots from number 6, Jonathan Davenport, Superman.
Yeah, his speed weeks was up and down. I think he had 1 or 2 wins. Again, I'm kind of forgetting. I looked at so many different numbers yesterday. They're all kind of blurring together. But like again, like this list is only so big, and this is how I seen it fit.
Yep. And then next up, number 7, another newcomer, picked up his first win in Lucas Oil Series, Dalton Wilson, Big Perm, they calling him.
Yeah, he was very fast at speed weeks. East Bay, he was contention almost every night. I think when they went to All-Tech, him and McCready had a good battle for the lead. So, yeah, I think he definitely earned his spot up there this week.
Yep. Number 6, Mike Marlar, gained probably the most spots, I think, on your list, +3.
Yeah, I think he got the last win down at speed weeks, and he kind of the same thing, had up and down, but I think he's got 2 wins and quite a few top 10 finishes.
Yep. Number 5, dropped 1 spot from our last rating.
I think
Shepherd.
People might get mad at me for that one, but I know B-Main's boys was wanting to know where the Lord and Savior was. And again, it's just kind of, I looked at the numbers, wins, top 5s, top 10s, and that's just kind of where he fell. These next top 3, they had better performances.
Yep. And I think the top 4 probably pretty predictable, but number 4 did drop a couple spots from the number 2 slot last time, RTJ.
Yeah, he started off strong, but I think he faded towards the end of speed weeks. And I think the last night he hit the wall by himself. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Yep. Number 3, again, gained a couple spots, Devin Moran.
Yeah, he was fast at Volusia. He had good battles for the lead several nights. And the next 2 it came down to they had more wins.
Yep. And again, number 2, moving up 1 spot, Hudson O'Neill.
Yeah. They raced quite a bit between Lucas Oil and World of Outlaws, and just Hudson had more wins than Devin did.
Yep. And at number 1, no change from the last time. And you're not just doing this because we had him on the podcast last time, but you got Bobby Pierce in the top slot.
Correct. Yeah. Again, I looked at the numbers. Well, I think he had 6 wins and 13 starts, and if you want to count his win in New Zealand, it was 7 wins and 14 starts. So literally half the races he's entered, he's won. So
yep,
that's the numbers don't lie.
Yep, and dropped from the list, Tim McCready, Chris Madden, Brandon Overton.
Yeah, Madden, he just didn't have any wins down in speed weeks. Overton did. He ran, I think it was like a winter national or the winter freeze at Screven, which still got a win, but all the competition was over at speed weeks. I don't want to knock his win. And McCready, again, just the list is so big. Someone had to get cut.
How's our list looking as far as, I'll put you on the spot, as far as the Rocket versus Longhorn battle?
I'm looking. Hudson, I know, was in a Rocket. I think the only one other up there in a rocket is Tyler Erb.
Okay. Well, improvement from last time. Last time there was only one rocket on the list, so 2 rockets on the list, 8 Longhorns. But again, you said it's just a lot of guys are running Longhorns right now too, which is a part of it.
Yeah, and if you look at the percentage of, probably 75% of people out there are in Longhorns, and the rest are just, Capital, Rocket. I can't think of anything else.
Couple kryptonites sprinkled in, maybe.
Yeah, or I know the BMF chassis, Earl Pearson's in one of those, so it's just majority are in Longhorns. So
who was the
that's just the
driver
way it
that just bought Capital? Wasn't there a driver that just bought Capital race cars?
Yeah, Shane Clayton did.
Okay. No, that was in the news a couple of weeks ago. Well, Jacob, we've made him wait long enough. So let's bring on our guest for tonight. If you've been to Highland Speedway, his voice will sound definitely very familiar. He's been the announcer at Highland Speedway for a long time. He's announced at other tracks in the area like Tri-City, St. Charles Speedway, Godfrey Speedway. Let's bring him on here. It's the voice of Highland Speedway, Doug Jenkins. What's up, Doug?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's up, Doug?
And
Good to hear
Doug,
you.
correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. You and Jacob actually shared the announcer's booth for a race or two, right?
Oh, we did? What was that, about 3 years ago? Does that sound right, Jacob?
Yeah, that would make sense since I did it, and then since then I've been running the Warrior class. So yeah, I think it was 3 years ago.
All right.
Jacob is a Renaissance man. I mean, he can do it all. He can podcast, he can announce, he can drive. I mean, multi-talented. But let's focus on Mr. Jenkins. Doug, tell us first. I've got a few questions here for you as we get rolling along. Tell us kind of how you got involved in radio and in announcing.
Well, I always like to talk, and I like to hear my own voice, so that was a natural. Went to radio school at Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, WLCA. Spent time there, and about the time I was heading into my final year of the program, I heard that Tri-City Speedway was undergoing a ownership change. And I thought, well, I love racing. I love talking. Sounds like a natural. I'm going to put my name in the hat and see if anybody'd be interested in having me on. And turns out they did. And boy, I was awful that first year. I had no idea how I ever came back for a second year. But I got my start there at Tri-City Speedway and met some really good people, and just been going ever since. This is year 35, I believe.
Wow. And you've announced. I've looked. I did a little bit of background check on you. You've announced. It looks like at 12 different tracks. Let me read them off here: Tri-City, St. Charles Speedway, Godfrey Speedway, I-55 at Peevely, Belle Claire Speedway, the Horse Palace, Highland Speedway, Bond County Raceway, Mount Vernon Raceway, Bunker Hill Mini Speedway, Gateway Motorsports Park, and Fayette County Raceway, or the Brownstown Bull Ring. So, wow. So tell us about some of those venues maybe and what you remember about them. I know people would probably love to hear about, the Godfrey and the St. Charles, places that aren't around anymore.
Well, I actually grew up a mile away from Godfrey Speedway, and that was just part of my growing up. Friday nights, late in later years, but it used to be a Saturday night track when I first caught the bug, and it was just magic anytime I got to go there. It was what made me tick. So when I had a chance to take the microphone there at the start of the 1991 season, that was the year that they switched from sprint cars to late models as their top class. I jumped at the chance. And I want to thank Larry Walters, who is, along with Glenn Jacoby, one of the grandfathers of Treb Jacoby. So a lot of what my success as a racing announcer can be attributed to are Treb's grandfathers on each side of the family. So that's pretty special for me.
Huh. That's a pretty neat story. We've been trying to get Treb over at Highland last year. I don't know if you made it last year, but hopefully we can get Treb over there. We'd love to hear more about that story. What about some of these other places? What's the Horse Palace? We have to know what the Horse Palace is.
The Horse Palace is kind of the precursor of what we're seeing with the indoor series that Doe Run runs, for example, or maybe the mini Magic Mile. It was a go-kart track, a racing kart track built inside of a horse arena in St. Charles, Missouri. It was about as far as you can go on 94 and still be in the city of St. Charles. And that was Tammy and Kevin Gundaker's first foray into the promotion game. So I had a chance to spend a little bit of time out there. And after the races were over, there was a bar next to the arena, and we'd all go over there and shoot some pool and play some foosball and have a nice beverage or two after the races were over. And it was just really laid back wintertime fun.
That's great. And one more follow up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jacob. Bond County Raceway. What kind of races did you announce there? Because I was born and raised in Greenville, so I'm curious about that.
For a little while back in the early 2000s, there was an oval track, a quarter-mile track on the inside of the horse track that I believe is still there. And through the efforts of Tim Herbst, who has been my longtime racing buddy, confidant, et cetera, they put together a mini series for a couple of summers, and it was at the Bond County Raceway. And it was a fun track, nothing fancy about it, just an old throwback. Let's cut out an oval and go racing. So that's what we did for a couple of years, and I want to thank Tim for the opportunity. Ken Johnson was a part of that as well, and Sean Franklin, who eventually wound up with me and Tim and a couple of other people who had a similar vision, at least at the time, founding the Cars Racing Series, the Great American Racing Series. So that's my Bond County story.
Gotcha.
All right, so Doug, what would you tell someone that is thinking about getting into announcing as a career or just kind of like side gig? This is something you gave me advice on, and it was just one thing where I enjoyed it. But, yes, I'm watching races, but it's way more work than I would have ever thought it was sitting in the booth.
Yeah, it's more than just talking into a microphone. Obviously, you have to be comfortable behind a microphone to make it all work. You got to do homework too. You can't just go up there and just start talking. You have to research the event. There's a lot of sponsor reads that you have to take care of. Throughout the course of the night, you'll get announcement requests like wish so-and-so a happy birthday. It's a very busy environment. So you need to be able to multitask but still be able to come back to the task at hand, which is describing the racing action while the cars are on the track. And then while you have an opportunity when the cars are not on the track to plug the sponsors, tell everybody what's in the concession stand, let them know what's coming up on the schedule. There is a lot of homework that goes into it. And I'm sure that that part of it is appreciated by those who have not done it until they actually start to do it.
Yeah, because I made some notes. Then, I kind of have a general idea on some stuff like chassis, engines, stuff like that. But then I looked at your notes and I'm like, wow, I totally wasn't quite sure what I got myself into. You had pages and pages of drivers that were all typed out, and that all takes time.
That is an ongoing process, and I've actually gotten behind the eight ball a little bit here late in the spring. A lot of times I'll let Facebook do some of the work for me. A lot of drivers have gone to posting up their sponsor lists, which is very helpful. Some drivers have so many sponsors you can't get through them all in one go, but you get as many as you can. But the advent of having drivers on social media, posting their sponsors, posting some of their accomplishments, just little tidbits of trivia that you can pick up throughout the course of the week is really a time saver. And it's not that I don't want to get out in the pit area and walk around and talk to each driver. It's just not possible in the amount of time that we have to work with. So Facebook has been a great shortcut for that. And eventually I hope to try and get to everybody that's at the track at some point in time. But yes, social media, for all of its faults, has been helpful, at least in this arena.
Yeah, and something you gave me advice for asking me my first night in booth, I actually kind of brought into this podcast. It's like, hey, how do you guys want to, how do you want to do this? You just want to do it like two buddies hanging in the garage, or do you just want it like, rifle back forth questions? And, I felt like we did okay. I definitely needed work, but, some of the things you taught me in the booth is something I brought into the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. I can definitely hear that you are that's a lot more comfortable behind the microphone than you were that first time. And everybody has somewhere to start. And when you do it constantly or regularly, at least, it eventually just becomes just another thing. We're just talking.
Mm-hmm.
How nervous were you? How nervous were you that first time at Godfrey Speedway when you got behind the mic? I mean, because it's not something you can really. It's kind of, especially back then, you couldn't really practice. Not like you could watch a YouTube video and practice.
Right. I felt fairly comfortable because I knew, as Jacob does, I knew most of the drivers that were going to be competing, even though it was a brand new format at the Speedway with the sprint cars leaving and late models coming in. I had done enough announcing of late models between Tri-City and St. Charles Speedway, and of course reading National Speed Sport News, which used to be a newspaper. You actually had to pick it up and get the ink on your fingers. Between all those sources, I felt I had a fairly good grasp on who was going to be there, who the major players were. But then I picked up the microphone and realized I'm at the track where I caught the bug. This is pretty special. And it took me a moment to just gather myself up. And I had a pretty good head cold that night too. I was out way too late the night before, and wound up picking up quite the case of the sniffles.
Uh-oh. Well, but you pushed through, you got through it. I know, there's always some nerves when you get behind the microphone for the first time. So
Yep.
you're, not only are you behind the mic, at Highland Speedway, tell people what you do at the Big Z 107.1 in Alton. And also you've got a racing show, Pedal to the Metal.
Let's start with Pedal to the Metal, and then I'll get over to the Big Z because they do kind of play off of each other. A lot of the content you hear on the podcast originally is on the Big Z at 107.1 FM. The podcast, Pedal to the Metal, as you mentioned, it's been going on in some form or another for, gosh, I've forgotten how many years. It was originally launched by Tim Herbst, who I come back to again. It was his idea of Pedal to the Metal. I'd done shows of various names in the past, so we just kind of brought our knowledge and our passion for the racing together and did a show. It is something that I try to go and get up online Wednesday or Thursday of each week. It's kind of a floating target, since a lot of me being able to get it online depends on how much I'm backed up at my regular job, because that's where my editing equipment is. My regular job at the Big Z, well, let's talk about that. I'm a news reporter there, and I do probably 55, 60 hours a week, which is just fine with me when you count the meeting coverage. I go to the city council meetings and school board meetings and things like that, and try and keep up with all the various politicking that's going on in the area, and try to make sure that it doesn't get too deep without our listeners knowing what's happening and how it's going to affect them. So you can catch me on the Big Z Monday through Fridays. I first go on the air at 10 a.m. I have an hour at 12 noon and another hour at 3 o'clock, and I wrap up my day after the 5 o'clock news.
Gotcha. So they can find you there on the FM dial 107.1, broadcasting out of the
news.com.
Okay. And then we also threw up, so Pedal to the Metal on Facebook. Go to @Pedal to the Metal Show. You can find them on Facebook. And what I always like, you have the driver interviews. If you watch Doug, when he's doing the driver interviews, he's got his recorder right there too. And so he usually catches the driver interviews. So, right, you can usually catch the driver interviews on your Pedal to the Metal show.
And the one thing I like about doing it that way, rather than trying to catch them after the race or before the race, is they still have that adrenaline pumping. And they're going to speak their mind, whether they want to or not. They're going to speak their mind, and it's going to be safe for all posterity.
Well, Jacob, are you getting phone calls? Are people calling you, telling you, have questions, things they want you to say on the podcast?
I'm not sure what's going on. My phone's propped up, and all of a sudden it'll be slow for like 2 seconds, and all of a sudden I'm gone. So I have no idea what's going on.
Well, that's okay. We'll roll with it. We're good. You're up with your next question.
Yeah. So, Doug, who are some drivers that are retired that you miss seeing at the track?
I'll start with the driver that helped me catch the bug. Originally, he's no longer with us. He died of cancer a few years ago. A guy by the name of Kevin Goss. He used to race the triple nickel at Godfrey and Tri-City, and he'd go up to Macon Speedway. And the way he kind of helped me catch the bug, he worked at the gas station next to Godfrey Speedway. And one night, it was on a Friday night, my dad took his car up to the service station to get an oil change or something on his car. And Kevin had his car in the next bay. He was getting it ready for the next night's racing. And he saw me eyeing the thing up, asked me if I wanted to sit behind the wheel. And sure, why not? And after that, I was hooked. So Kevin Goss, I'll put that first and foremost. Also miss watching guys like Donnie Beechler and Tony Wyant. These are sprint car racers at the old Godfrey Speedway, and they'd get up on the high side. There was a berm in turns 1 and 2. It didn't have a fence in the old days. There was just a dirt berm, and they could rocket off of that just like a motocross racer would work the ruts on arena cross. In fact, I saw Tony at Highland Speedway not all that long ago. He was there with his son racing a micro, and had a chance to catch up with him. So that was fun. Donnie Beechler, he wound up racing Indy cars for a couple of years in the IRL with AJ Point. So that was pretty cool too. As far as others who are retired, now I'm not sure he's ever actually used the word retired, but Mike Hammerly, who is a longtime regular at the Highland Speedway, I understand he still has a car. If he gets the itch, he'll come out, but miss seeing him because it was always great fun to root for the underdog. Randy Cordy, he was very influential as we both came onto the scene about the same time back in the mid to late 80s, me with the announcing and him obviously with his racing. Now he's obviously doing the consulting business and having great luck with that. Dandy Don Klein. Who doesn't love Dandy Don? One of the first racers that caught my ear listening to the old Victory Lane program on WSIE. Tip of the cap to Eileen Waters, who was one of the original hosts of that show, along with Robin Lowry and Ken Myers and Buddy Primus. They are some of my first influences from the broadcasting standpoint of view. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the late Ed Dixon as well, who was just a really fun guy to be around, a kind soul. And again, the C word got him a couple of years ago. So that's just scraping the tip of the iceberg. So many great influences there in the world of racing.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned a lot of historic names, that go down in history at the local tracks. Maybe give us one or two of the most dramatic moments that you witnessed in racing.
Oh boy, that's that's tough to narrow down. And before I get too far off of the retirees, I wanted to mention Chris Bargetzi, who, when I first started announcing, he was wrapping up his driving career and getting into the car owner phase of his career. And, he treated me like he'd known me forever. What a nice guy. Chris Bargetzi, one of the first, if not the first, inductee into the Highland Speedway Hall of Fame. So now, dramatic races. I remember this was about the same time that I got started in the racing announcing business at Godfrey Speedway, a driver by the name of Rick Rhodes. He was in the street stock class at the time. And I remember it was on a season championship night. They were running extra laps, and he got a flat tire, or opening lap or two. And he wound up going down a lap because he was waiting, coasting around, I think, to draw the caution, and they didn't throw the caution until he'd already gone a lap down. He went into the pit area, got the tire changed, and over the course of the race, he not only unlapped himself, he came back to win the doggone thing. And that's the only time to this day that I've ever seen a driver unlap himself on a short track and go on to win. There was the time at Highland Speedway where I saw Rick Cluse go over the wall on the back straightaway. That was pretty dramatic for all of us, I believe. Dennis Sellers caught the turn 1 gate head on. Mariah Melton did as well. Those are two very dramatic events as well. But maybe maybe the most dramatic thing wasn't actually a race itself, but was the prelude to the final night at St. Charles Speedway in 2001, when every driver who had signed in went out onto the track after wheel packing for the national anthem, and they all took a couple of laps around with the national anthem playing. Probably 100 cars on the track at the time in three wide formation. What a sight that was.
Wow. Yeah, definitely some historic moments. I mean, you've been there, you said 35 years you've been doing this. Were you there the night of the Super Shep stomp back then? I guess that
was not.
Okay.
That was during my 3-year sabbatical from announcing.
Okay.
And the reason I decided to take some time off is Godfrey Speedway had just closed, and I finished off the year working some races at Tri-City, but it just didn't feel the same without my home track still being there. And I decided to step away for a little bit and explore some other avenues. And I was doing okay until Donnie McElroy, who's been my longtime announcing partner, asked me to come back at Tri-City and help him announce the final day of the Mod Mania. I said, well, okay, but just this one time. Well, that one time has never stopped. I've been back ever since, probably a good dozen years now.
Well, you know a lot of drivers. You tell them a lot of neat stories. I think Jacob's got some other questions regarding drivers.
Yeah. Okay. So who are some of your favorite drivers to interview? Then a follow-up question: do you enjoy interviewing first-time winners?
First-time winners. I'll start with that one. I love doing first-time winner interviews. In fact, if we're running behind and we made the call that we're going to skip driver interviews for that night, I'll call an audible, and if it's a first-time winner, they get some mic time. I love it. You only get one first time, so you got to make it special for them. Drivers who I enjoy interviewing are the drivers that love to talk. And first one that comes to mind is Mike Harrison. He will talk at length at pretty much any subject you ask him. He's not the only one. Chad Sellers is a great interview as well. As I'm thinking toward some of the street stock racers, there's some characters out there. So I probably couldn't narrow it down to just one street stock racer, but one from my past who's since moved on to the modified division, Rick Canoyer, the destroyer Rick Canoyer. He'll race the number 14 car, and we'll see him on occasion come to Highland. He likes to hit all the tracks if he can. Maybe one more driver that is a great interview. It goes without saying, Kenny Wallace, and it's easy to talk to him because ask him one question, he's got the rest.
Yeah, there's some of those guys that just have skills on the mic. We had Mike Harrison on the podcast a couple of podcasts ago, and Jacob didn't. I think he set the record. I think we almost went 2 hours with Mike Harrison, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we were at like 2 hours, 20 minutes, had to throw an audible, and I don't even know if we got, halfway through our questions.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part.
I'm going to top that record tonight.
We're gonna have to do a part two with Mike Harrison. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit in the questions. I think one that I wanted to know is kind of what's your favorite maybe class of racing to announce, and explain to the listeners what's the difference in announcing like a street stock race versus a late model race. What kind of information do you have in front of you to help you do your job?
Street stock races, really laid back. For the most part, the guys and gals that are out there, they want to do good, but their main goal is to have fun. And that's kind of why we all got into this, whether we're announcers or racers or whatever our particular position in life is in the racing scene, is we all wanted to have fun. Street stock, it's really laid back. When it comes to the late model class, I don't want to say it's a little more stiff, but you put a little bit more into building the drama as they come down to the green flag. You try and build the suspense. This driver did this earlier in the night. Can he slice through traffic and pick up that big win? I enjoy announcing all the different divisions just for their own various personality differences. I really, and this is nothing against the fendered cars, but I really enjoy announcing a good sprint car race. I just tickled pink every time I get a chance to pick up the mic and talk about those guys with the open wheels.
Yeah, it was fun having the Extreme Outlaw Midget series for the first time. We're gonna have a full show of only open wheel stuff coming up this September. But talk about too, what are some of the things as you're sitting in the booth? What are you looking at that's helping you do your job while you're announcing?
Something that has been a relatively recent addition, just within the last dozen years since I've come back, is the transponders and the computer scoring, which it wasn't even a part of what we were doing when I walked away there in the early 2000s. But when I came back there in 2009, I believe it was, that was already in use, and it had been in use for a while. So I'm keeping an eye on the transponders and the computer scoring. That's one thing that's helping me do my job quite well, or quite a bit easier, I should say. I'm also trying to keep an eye on the entire racetrack. If I'm down in the middle, I'll go in a clockwise direction rather than the counterclockwise that the race cars go, because I, at least in theory, can watch the track in half the time if I'm spinning in the other direction. It may sound ridiculous, but it works for me.
No, those are the things we don't think about.
Yeah. Also, I'm trying to listen with my ears as well. If something doesn't sound right, and Jacob, I'm sure that you can attest to this as well with your own racing experience. If something doesn't sound right, if it doesn't sound like every other car out there, you're going to notice that, and then you may try and diagnose where it's coming from. And in your case, hopefully it's not coming from your own car.
Yeah, it's something that was kind of cool. Starting off the year, I had one of the quietest cars out there, so that was tough to hear what was going on with my own car. But it was nice; I could hear everything going on around me. I could tell where they're at. But I got with Sean, the car owner, and I was like, dude, we got to do something about this, because I'm sitting in staging and I can't even tell if my cars are on or not. It's that quiet. So, listening to what's going on is definitely a part of it. And it's just one of the other things you got to think about.
And other things, what about, you're sitting in the booth, Doug, with the scorers, right? So you're hearing kind of the chatter that's going on over the radio?
Yes, and a lot of times you'll get some tips as to what the officials on the track are seeing, and then you can go back and keep a closer eye on whoever's doing whatever they're keeping an eye on, and see if you're seeing that exact same thing too.
Yeah.
It can get quite noisy in that booth as the scorers are doing their thing. They have to communicate with each other. You mentioned the radios, the two-way radios that keep you in contact with the rest of the officials, and the receivers, which lets you talk to the drivers. It can get pretty noisy up there. So keeping your focus is definitely a skill that you have to learn.
Yeah, something that I think is just hilarious is when you're listening on Dirt Vision or Flow, one of the big series, and the booth is not what we will call sterile. And so before they can hit that mute button, you can hear somebody yelling at a driver on the receiver.
And sometimes you know exactly who it is yelling, doing the yelling, if it's somebody who's been around before too.
Number so-and-so, get in your spot. What's your problem?
So, hi, Brad. Hope you're listening.
Well, go ahead, Jacob. You're up.
What are some things you're excited about at Highland this year?
I'm really excited about this expanded handicapped watching viewing area. The Brondemeyer Racing Team helped make this all happen. I understand they found a sponsor to bring in the materials, and the wheelchair area, for lack of a better term, which is just to the right of the booth, has more than doubled in size. And what a great thing that is, because there are more people that would come to the racetrack if they had an area like that to utilize, and hopefully it'll go to good use this year.
Yeah, I'd say that probably tripled in size. I'd say that the handicapped area.
And Doug, I seen a comment that you said on that post that they need to make the announcers booth bigger as well.
I knew this was coming next.
Yeah, if you need a petition signed for that, I will gladly sign, because that first night I was up there, like it is tight. You don't have much of a work area. You're shuffled down. You get the corner of basically the counter, and it's trapezoid shape, so you're kind of getting the short end of the stick, and you got a clipboard that doesn't even stand on the counter. So yeah, I'll sign that petition to get you some more space.
And it gets really crowded in there when you have one of the touring series. Like this year, we got the World of Outlaw late models coming in. They bring a lot of equipment to do their broadcast on Dirt Vision. The regular broadcast from Dirt Vision, from the Mars series and the Extreme series, the Midget series last year, they brought in a lot of equipment. So did the Summer Nationals. But it's even more equipment when you bring in the World of Outlaws for their late model show. Because there's just so many more bells and whistles that go into a broadcast. So
yeah, Doug and I communicate a lot via text during the race night. As maybe an announcement or something that or people are standing on the fence again. It's little things like that. But man, I poked my head in there a couple of times during the special show, and I feel for you, Doug. We're trying our best. It's on the to-do list, I can tell you that. So we're gonna work on that for you.
I remember announcing. I announced one year back in, I think it was 1998. There before I don't even know what happened, but I was on the infield in 1998, and that to me was almost the perfect setup. Being down in the middle, away from a lot of the distractions that you have in the grandstands. But then again, you don't get some of the distractions that you get in the grandstands, like the little kids coming up, knocking on the door and say, "Hey, can you wish my dad a happy birthday?" Or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's a wonderful thing to have some isolation. Other times, you really wish you were a little bit closer to the crowd. I just wish we had a bigger booth, because when it was built, there were a lot smaller people working there.
Completely understand that.
I'm not a small fella.
Well, speaking of birthdays, I think we did have somebody in the comments that, hey, Doug, they want to say a happy 69th birthday to Harry Felterbush. Okay, that's a good one, Jeremy. You got me to say it. So,
yep.
We've got some jokesters in the comments. So good one by Jeremy Pate there. Also looks like we got Bubba's Bout Broke podcast. They're out of Portland, Tennessee, so they wanted to give a shout out and say hello. So let's play a little game, Doug. Let's play a little game to kind of wrap things up here.
All right.
Since my little snafu with Felterbush, but we're gonna give you a local driver's name, and I want you to give me 3 words to describe them, and don't hold back. There's no hurt feelings here on the Highland Dirt podcast. Okay.
All right. 3 words.
All right. Let's go first. Let's go. Free Billy Knable.
Billy Knable. Unafraid. Personality. And when I say personality, I mean big personality. And loyalty. If you've ever seen him around the crew, loyalty is a big thing.
Yep, definitely. Mike Harrison.
Mike Harrison. I'm just going to go ahead and say one word that I think will cover it. Legendary. Legendary. I mean, we are living in a truly special time. Whether you're a fan of his or not, there is no denying that he's doing something very special. Well over 600 feature wins, and now he's embarking on an entirely new genre of the stock car game, and that is the super late models. And with just a little bit of experience, he's picked it right back up. So legendary.
What about another super late model guy from Highland, but maybe on the opposite side of the spectrum, but does win a lot? Michael Kloos.
Michael Kloos. Let's go with dedicated, family man, and I'll explain that in a moment. But snake bitten as well, because for all the winning he does, he has had some awful luck. I think back to a race in Jacksonville where he got injured a couple of years ago, and then the tornado situation from was it last spring or the spring before, where they were coming home from the races when the tornado sirens went off, and his tow rig wound up getting flipped by the wind. So that's the snake bit part.
Yeah, I think that was 2023. Jacob, I think you were supposed to ask Michael Kloos. We're trying to get him on the podcast, right?
Yeah, I haven't got the chance to talk to him yet. I didn't see him yesterday, and I was off today.
Yeah. So the Trenton Tornado is his nickname, but yeah, he had some bad luck with a tornado last season, leaving the track, unfortunately. Luckily, no one was hurt seriously. I think they did lose the hauler, which Chance Bailey, our director of competition, bought that hauler apparently, the trailer. So, but I think the truck was totaled too, wasn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, yep. And Jansen Chevrolet was able to sell him a new one.
There you go. Well, a couple more names here. Let's go with Trevor Isaac.
Trevor Isaac, winner. If he's not in the winner's circle, you're asking yourself why he's not. Talented. I've seen him wheel race car in several different track conditions, and he can get around there as good as anybody else. And does fan favorite count as one word or two?
We can count it as one.
Well, let's do that as one, because it seems like there's always a crowd of people around Trevor, be it before the races or after, and he takes time for everybody. So tip of the hat to the driver, the number 9.
Okay. What about Owen Steinkenny, the O-Show?
He is, gosh, we're still on the 3 words though, aren't we?
We can go more. You know, we're flexible on the Highland Dirt podcast.
All right. Well, I will say that he has incredible amount of talent that has not been tapped yet. We've seen a lot of that talent come out, but I truly believe that there is a lot more talent yet to be developed. And with him running the full-blown modifieds now, he'll have a chance to shine. So let's go with
Let's put that into one. Let's put that into one. Okay.
So let's go with big talent for one. Let's go with reserved, at least on the microphone. When I have a chance to interview him, and I do quite often, he'll get straight to the point. He'll tell you what you want to know. But you can tell he's still getting used to being on the microphone. He's doing a lot better at getting the personality out there, at least what I've seen. So there's that. And intimidating. And I mean that in the best ways, because if you're on the track and you see that number 5 is up on that scoreboard, the brand new scoreboard in turn 1 from last year, by the way, thank you, Kurt. If you see that number 5 is coming up, you know that you're going to have a race on your hands. So I think it may be a little intimidating for some of the racers out there without the levels of experience that you may see in some of the veterans.
Yeah, and he's a young guy. He's got a lot of years to race. Runs good equipment.
I believe he's going to be around for a long time, doing a lot of winning.
Yeah, won his first modified track championship in 2023. So I think that's going to be the first of many big wins for the O-Show. So a couple more. Rusty Griffaw, the Festus Flash.
Fun. I first met him when he was a teenager racing street stocks down at I-55 Raceway, and he has always been a fun guy to talk to be around. So let's go with fun for Rusty. MacGyver. I'm going to MacGyver him, because
that's a great word.
It really is, because he can take pieces and parts that other racers would just throw away, but his knowledge of the sport, of the mechanics of it, he can get that part back in, if not tip-top shape, at least competitive shape, and he can continue to go fast on a budget. And let's go with family, because I've seen him interact with his family quite a bit, especially his young son, who is now doing some racing in the karting world, and I think junior sprints as well, maybe.
Cruz, right? Cruz Griffaw.
Yeah. And boy, he just shines whenever you talk about the boy.
Yep. And Jacob, what do you call the equipment that Rusty has in his shop? Didn't you have a word for it?
The air jig. I've heard he's referenced before that he just starts cutting and measuring. He doesn't have, at one point he didn't have a jig, but yeah, he says he just cuts the measures, and that's how he gets where he ends up at.
Yeah,
he certainly
helps out.
Yeah,
helps out a lot of drivers. I know he's always willing to help. So one more here, Doug. Okay. Sean Horseman, the driver, not the track president.
Sean Horseman, the driver. Exciting. He would always put on a show, whether he was in front or in the back trying to get through the pack. So we're going to go with exciting. Obviously, we're going to go with champion because he was track champion in the modified division a few years ago. And fearless. I mean, come on, he's the rollover record holder at the Speedway.
So yeah, the Grapper House Metal Company Night of Destruction. So last year he actually had a couple of drivers substitute to do the rollover contest. But if you remember, Doug, we were kind of sitting there announcing, and they weren't able to do the rollovers quite like Sean. So I think, didn't we egg him on to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's a pro when it comes to rolling a car. That's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah, and first time out, I think rolled it over at least 2 or 3 times. Well, Doug, I think it's about time we wrap up. We've hit that about hour mark, a little over, here on this episode of the Highland Dirt Podcast. Did you have a good time?
Had a great time, and I can't wait to have a great time out there at the track. We're less than a month away from being out there now.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Any shout outs you'd like to give?
Just the biggest shout out I want to give is to my fellow announcing partners, each and every one who I've had throughout the year that I've worked with. I've enjoyed every one of you. So thank you for being a part of my announcing life as well. And of course, a big shout out to my oldest son, Andrew, who's celebrating his 36th birthday today.
Oh, wow. There you go. Well, make sure you listen to Doug on the Big Z 107.1 on the FM dial. And again, we'll throw up Pedal to the Metal on Facebook. Go to @Pedal to the Metal Show on Facebook and find the show there. And we appreciate you joining us, Doug. We'll see you soon out at the track.
All right. Thanks for having me on, and have a great evening.
Yep.
Thanks,
and
Doug.
Also like to thank my co-host today on the Highland Dirt Podcast, Jacob Blumenstein. Jacob, tell everybody where they can find you most days.
Yeah, I work at Jenkins Chevrolet in Germantown. Also under the Go Jansen Auto Group, where they have 2 other dealerships, Breeze and Carmine. I can sell you anything off their lot as well.
Yep. And let's remind everybody, the Highland Dirt Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Jansen Auto Group. Hundreds of vehicles are available right now at gojansen.com with Jansen Ford Breeze, Jansen Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Carmi, and Jansen Chevrolet in Germantown. They have just the vehicle you're looking for. You can search their entire inventory at gojansen.com. That's go, JANSEN.com. Jansen Auto Group is proud to support local dirt track racing and world famous Highland Speedway. And get over there and see Jacob if you need to buy a car. So let's say you own a business and maybe you want to be featured on the Highland Dirt Podcast. Maybe you want to buy a sign, sponsor a race at world famous Highland Speedway. Last year in 2023, we reached more than 5 million people through social media, and it's only growing from there. So send us an email at highlanddirtpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you over all of the details. So Jacob keeps jumping in and out here on us, but as we're getting close to the end here, make sure you follow Highland Speedway and the Highland Dirt Podcast on all the socials, on X, YouTube, and like Doug said, don't forget opening night 2024 at world famous Highland Speedway is on March 16th. Doug, it's only 18 days away, so you can download this episode where you find all of your favorite podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. And I'm Kurt Vonder, Haar, your host of the Highland Dirt Podcast. And remember, folks, whether it's Peebly, Brownstown, Tri-City, Belclaire, Highland, or your home track, get out there and support your local dirt track, would you? We'll see you next week.